We all think we know the story of Apollo 11, right? A glorious triumph, one giant leap for mankind. But what if I told you that story is a carefully constructed lie? Not a lie about if we went to the moon. Oh no, we went. The deception is about how we almost never came back. The real story, the one they didn't want us to know, is one of near catastrophe, impossible pressure, and a single tiny mistake that almost doomed the entire human space program. This is what really happened up there.
So picture this. Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin are on the moon. They're 400,000 kilometers from any other human being. Now, what do you think the greatest danger was? A rocket explosion? A computer meltdown? Nope. It was a tiny piece of broken plastic. As Armstrong was squeezing his way out of the lunar module, his bulky suit bumped against a circuit breaker, the one switch they needed to fire up the engine and get off the moon. And snap, it broke. Just like that, they were stranded, alone, on the silent, unforgiving surface of the moon.
You could imagine the scene back in Houston. Complete silence. There were no protocols for this, no backup plan. It looked like it was over. But then, in this moment of pure desperation, Buzz Aldrin had an idea. He wasn't looking at a multi-million-dollar piece of tech. He was looking at a simple ballpoint pen in his pocket. He realized he could jam the plastic pen into the hole to complete the circuit. A ballpoint pen, saving the most high-tech mission in history. But believe me, that broken switch, that was just the beginning. The whole mission was a tightrope walk over an abyss of disasters. To really get how they ended up in that life-or-death spot, you have to go back. Back to a world completely locked in a desperate race, where the moon wasn't just a rock in the sky. It was the ultimate prize in a global war of ideologies. So in the early 1960s, America was losing this space race, and I mean losing badly. First, the Soviets launched Sputnik. Then they put the first man in space, Yuri Gagarin. It was blow after blow to American pride and prestige. The political pressure was absolutely crushing. America didn't just need a win, it needed a miracle. They needed a goal so insane, so impossible, that pulling it off would change the world forever. And man, what a goal it was. You have to remember, when JFK made that promise, we didn't have smartphones, we didn't have the internet, we didn't even have GPS. The computers they used had less processing power than your pocket calculator. And yet, he promised not just to put a man on the moon, but to bring him home safely. It was basically a declaration of war against the laws of physics.
And they backed it up with everything they had. In today's money, the Apollo program cost over $100 billion. More than 400,000 engineers, scientists, and technicians were mobilized for this one single goal. It wasn't just a mission anymore. It was a national obsession, a crusade.
But all the money and brainpower in the world couldn't change one simple fact. This was incredibly dangerous. The journey we remember as this smooth, perfect success, it was actually a cascade of terrifying, near-fatal crises, one right after the other. And the stakes were made brutally clear from the very beginning. In 1967, during a routine launch rehearsal, a fire broke out in the cabin of Apollo 1, killing all 3 astronauts. This wasn't a game. Everyone working on the program knew, deep in their bones, that the smallest mistake, the slightest oversight, would be fatal. And then came the moment. The most critical few minutes of the entire mission, the final descent to the lunar surface. And this number starts flashing on the cockpit display, 12:02. It was an alarm, a warning. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. And the worst part? The astronauts had absolutely no idea what it meant. They radioed a frantic mission control where engineers were scrambling, trying to figure it out. Turns out the guidance computer was overloaded. With just seconds to spare, they got the call from the ground, "Go, fly through the alarm." A gut-wrenching decision that could have ended in total disaster.
But the crises just kept coming. Armstrong looked out the window and realized the autopilot was flying them straight into a crater filled with massive, jagged boulders. He grabbed manual control to steer the lander to a safer spot. And as he's doing this, a new alarm goes off in his ears. It's Buzz Aldrin's voice calling out the fuel level. It had just dropped to a critical 5%. Back on Earth, an entire world held its breath. Mission Control initiated the final abort countdown. If Armstrong couldn't land the Eagle in the next 60 seconds, they would have to fire the ascent engine and abandon the landing. The whole thing, the hopes of a nation, the dream of a decade, would end in failure, just a few feet from the lunar surface. He made it. With just 30 seconds of fuel left in the tank,
Neil Armstrong touched down. 30 seconds. That was the razor-thin margin between the greatest triumph in human history and a catastrophic failure. And if you want to know just how close they came, how real the possibility of failure was, this is it. President Nixon had a speech prepared and ready to go, a speech he would deliver to a mourning world in case Armstrong and Aldrin got stranded, left to die on the moon. It was an absolute miracle they survived. But while all these real dangers were hidden from the public, a very different and completely false story of deception began to spread back here on Earth. The idea that the greatest achievement in human history was all a big lie. So let's tackle the big one, the supposed smoking gun for the conspiracy theorists, the fluttering flag. Well, the truth is actually pretty simple mechanics. NASA knew there was no wind on the moon, so they designed the flag with a horizontal rod along the top to hold it out. That rod got jammed and didn't fully extend, which created the ripples in the fabric that people mistook for fluttering. It's really that simple. Then you've got the mystery of the missing stars. But it's not a mystery at all. It's just basic photography. The lunar surface was lit by the blindingly bright sun, and the astronauts' white suits were incredibly reflective. The camera was set for these super bright conditions, which means the faint light from distant stars was completely washed out. It's like trying to take a picture of stars in the middle of a sunny day here on Earth. You're not going to see them. But look, if you want the absolute nail in the coffin for any conspiracy theory, it's this. America's greatest enemy, the Soviet Union, had the technology and every possible motivation to expose a fake. They tracked the Apollo 11 mission from start to finish. And what did they do when it succeeded? They publicly announced that it was one of the greatest achievements in the history of civilization. Even their enemies had to admit the truth. So the real deception wasn't that we faked the moon landing. The real mystery, the question that has been silently hanging in the air for half a century, is why, after all that effort, after that unbelievable triumph, did we just stop going? Seriously, think about this. We achieved the impossible. We walked on another world. And then we just stopped. For over 50 years, not a single human has set foot on the moon. It's this bizarre, unbelievable pause in the story of human exploration, a great silence. And the truth behind the silence isn't some hidden alien base or a government cover-up. It's something far more human and, frankly, a lot more disappointing. The Apollo program was astronomically expensive, and with a war raging in Vietnam and huge problems at home, the American public, and its politicians, just lost their appetite for the stars. The main goal was to beat the Soviets. Once that was done, the political will, that grand vision, it all just evaporated. And that leaves us with the real question, doesn't it? Apollo 11 was a shining testament to what humanity can achieve when it dares to dream big. But our 50-year absence from the moon is a testament to something else entirely. How easily we let our greatest achievements just fade into history. What does it say about us that we reached for the stars, actually touched them, and then decided to come home for good? And maybe the most important question is, will we ever dare to dream that big again?